too. They already kind of do that. We do have an actual child here too, so two. Oh, including me? Oh, okay. I didn't see the name. Okay. So, everyone be nice, right? So that's good. I just wanted to set the tone a little bit. We have a lot of experts here. I think there's a lot always said about education, misconceptions as well, and everyone always brings a lot of passion to the different meetings. So we wanted to get groups here that could help answer your questions that are specifically on the board, on the district level. Matt Den, our former lieutenant governor, will be here, and he'll mention or be able to answer questions more about the Reading Consortium and the work that they're doing around redistricting. And Secretary Martin is in the. So I might just go drive her car around and get her in here. Yep, and Matt will be here in a second too. So I'm going to head out here in a second and help them. And turn it over to Representative Williams. They're all just going to do short introductions, and then this is going to be more time for you to ask questions. So all I ask is you please be respectful. Sometimes things get a little passionate sometimes, and people are disrespectful. So I just say, these folks are giving up their time tonight, so please be respectful so we can have a dialogue. I think one thing we're all passionate about is the future of our children and education in the state of Delaware, so we can all find a good place coming from that. I'm going to turn it over to Representative Williams.
Thanks, Mike. So I wasn't sure if I was going to make it here in time because I just left JFC. We're in JFC hearings, so I just came from Dover. I've been down there all day. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for coming out today. It's nice to see so many people here interested in education. I'm looking forward to the dialogue. It's nice to hear what our stakeholders have to say. We hear people at community meetings or emails or phone calls, but it's a little different when there's like a forum and we can actually hear questions and answers and we feed off of each other. So I just want to thank Representative Smith for partnering together. We are on opposite sides of the aisles, but we are friends. We actually agree a lot on education, and I value his friendship down there. It's nice to have people on the other side just to bounce ideas off of and get their opinions. So, Mike, thanks for your friendship. I appreciate it. I also want to thank my friend and my constituent, Dr. Green, for being here today. And I'm looking forward to having a great conversation. I also want to thank Vic for being here. He is our school board president. Yes, and a constituent. I didn't fill the room with all my constituents. So don't get any ideas that I did that. Mr. Pruitt, his mom and dad were my constituents, but he is not. So, but also, I appreciate that you're running again. So thank you for your service. That's where I started out. Well, I really started out as a PTA mom. And then I ran for school board. So school board was probably one of my favorite things that I did. I loved going into the buildings and meeting all the teachers and the administrators and the parents. And when I was involved with the PTA, it was, I probably volunteered way too much because I can remember being at Forrester and I was there all the time. I just loved being there. And my husband and I were down at the beach with our kids, and this little girl comes up to us in the ice cream shop and says, "Oh, Mommy, there's our principal." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm volunteering way too much." And I said, "Oh, no, I'm just a volunteer, but thank you." But it was nice that she recognized me. So, but education is it's so valuable but challenging, and we expect so much out of our educators and in our classrooms. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say, what we should be doing. So thank you for being here. I'll give it to you.
Good evening, everyone. Dr. Darrell Green, superintendent and resident of Red Clay. I have 3 children who are all, 2 are graduates of Red Clay and 1 currently in the system. My wife is a high school educator as well. I will spare you the background. I'm not a native of Delaware, but I've been here long enough now that my family in Maryland has formally disowned me because I have the Delaware accent. Right? I say water, right? But happy to be here, happy to serve the Red Clay Consolidated School District community, and looking forward to getting feedback and input from our constituents. We do have several educators who are also in the room this evening, several parents who I've had the fortunate pleasure of getting to know, some now face-to-face because we corresponded, whether that would be through telephone or email. So it's good to put faces with names. So thank you, everyone, and again, looking forward to engaging our community.
Hello, my name is Vic Leonard, president of Red Clay School Board. I had 20 years in the classroom at Upon High School as a earth science, and astronomy, and environmental science teacher, and also the wrestling coach, softball coach, and some football. So getting on to the school board, just extending my educational experience with the school board, I think was a great idea. I'm happy we're getting more educators onto the school board who've actually been on the front lines of teaching, and so they know what's going on. So again, I appreciate you coming out tonight, and hopefully you can answer some of the questions you may have. Thank you.
Introductions. Hi, everybody. I'm Cindy Martin, Secretary of Education, and so happy to be here even though I got stuck in the parking lot. It's great to be here. It's my 38th year in education. My first year here in Delaware, but definitely not my first year in education. I was a teacher for 17 years, taught kindergarten, first, second, third grade. Was a vice principal, a principal, a literacy specialist, a reading specialist. Was a principal at an inner city school for 10 years with 100% Title I students. And then I was superintendent of San Diego Unified School District, which is the second largest district in California. Was superintendent in San Diego Unified for 8 years, which was not very common for superintendents at large urban districts. It's usually 1 or 2 years. That was 100,000 students, 16,000 staff, a $1.2 billion budget. I did that for 8 years before being asked by the Biden-Harris administration to serve as the Deputy Secretary of the U.S. Department of Education, which I did for 4 years. And now I'm very happy and proud to be serving in Delaware, and you all have adopted me very well. Great state, first state. I've learned so much about Delaware since being here. I'm happy to be in partnership with elected, appointed leaders, parents, families, students, and I remember every single day who I work for, and it's the students, and getting it right in Delaware is what I'm here for. And I just like my friends right over here. They're adorable. Oh.
All right, I believe we're waiting for Representative Smith and Matt Denton to come in. They're looking for parking, so I guess no plan goes unpunished, right? In that you build a nice new facility and want community involvement, but don't have limited parking. So. I think we still might be struggling.
Well, I hate to start, but who wants to ask the first question?
I have a question. Can you explain about the New Innovation Center at McCain?
Yes, ma'am. So, Red Clay, we're proposing a innovation center. So for those who may not be familiar or know the current landscape of Red Clay, we have 7 different high school offerings in our district. If you count our 2 charter schools that the school board authorizes, Red Clay School District, our board and district are the only comprehensive school district in the state that serves as a charter school authorizer. In that being the case, we have 5 schools under our umbrella, that being McCain, Alexis I. DuPont High School, I'd like to say hospital, Alexis I. DuPont High School, the John Dickinson School, Cab Calloway School of the Arts, and Conrad School of Science. Currently, the John Dickinson School is a 6th through 12th grade configuration. Many are familiar with that because we have a middle years international baccalaureate program housed in that building. Conrad School of Science is a 6th through 12th grade configuration. Cab Calloway is also a 6th through 12th grade configuration, leaving both McCain and Alexis I. DuPont being our only traditional comprehensive 9th through 12th grade high schools. Over the last 20 to 25 years, we've seen various enrollment fluctuations through our comprehensive high schools. The latest being Alexis I. DuPont High School is roughly around 550, a little less in terms of students and their overall enrollment. Also to add to the addition that we offer 8 middle school offerings as well. Our 4 comprehensive middle schools being Stanton Middle, Skyline Middle, Alexis I. DuPont Middle, and HB DuPont Middle, in addition to the 3 6th through 12th grade configurations that I previously mentioned, and also Brandywine Springs is actually K-8 configuration. And so over the last 20 to 25 years, we've roughly been educating about, let's just say 5,000 high school age students across the district. But in that same period of time, we've increased the number of available high school seats roughly around about 1,500. And so when you see the fluctuation in the ebbs and flows of our enrollment over the years, with Alexis I. DuPont at its peak, right around 2009, was right around 1,400 students. That was coming at the expense of McCain and John Dickinson's suburban students, because their suburban students, in essence, were choicing to AI. So if you look at Dickinson at one point was 500 or so students. McCain, which roughly serves around 13, was right around 600 at one point. So we've seen these ebbs and flows. And so the school board asked us to look at feeder patterns, because our feeder patterns in Red Clay, in terms of where students live and the schools that they go to, haven't been adjusted or looked at for our secondary schools since 2015, I would say. But our high school feeder patterns haven't been adjusted well over 20 years. And so in looking at feeder patterns, our middle schools, particularly our four traditional middle schools, do not have straight line feeders. So if we're 8th grader at AI DuPont Middle School, you're still scheduled to go to one of 3 different high schools. So for various programmatic reasons, our board gave us a charge back in the fall of 2024 to look at our secondary attendance zones, programming, and straight line feeder patterns. And so various committees went through some work analyzing different options. And the decision that went before our board last July was to look at a tech innovation center, where we would look at concentrating our 21 different career pathways through 7 clusters at McCain. Part of the reason that McCain was selected is because many of our anchor CTE, so career technical education pathways that we have, are currently situated there. So from a capital standpoint, it really wouldn't require a lot of investment, but it was also ability for us to repurpose or balance our other 2 high school feeder patterns by redistributing students across the district, and then really allowing us to have more work-based learning opportunities for students, really going deep with our CTE programming with the goal of offering and having students graduate with certifications and credentials based on their career technical education pathways that they were participating in. Everything from culinary arts, we have allied health, various career pathways. Plant science is one that's currently at McCain. So really looking at, we have a teachers academy that looks at students who want to have a career, and whether it would be early childhood or go into public education. So really us looking to truly be innovative in the sense of really how do we provide opportunities for our students. Too often we hear that our schools aren't preparing students for the current and future workforce. And so how do we really look at that as a district, understanding that if we don't do something, in essence, we run the risk of seeing schools close within our district. And we see that happening, not so much in Delaware, but neighboring states. For example, last week, Philadelphia Public School District just announced that they're closing 20 schools. We have Skyline Middle, that for 50 years has served anywhere from 700 to 750. Their current enrollment is now at 381 students. And so change is not easy, and I know we're not, with our shortcomings in terms of how we engage, can we better engage the community? This is an opportunity to do so, but it's also shedding light on the fact that we have students, and in my particular case, getting ready to see my 9th commencement ceremony, graduating class, and students walk across the stage, only to see them. Matter of fact, I bumped into one of our graduates last night. He was busting tables at BBC. And that's a hard pill to swallow for me, to be quite frankly, because we know where the labor market is. Every student is not going to college. Our economy in Delaware has shifted and changed. And again, we just have to figure out a way to really capitalize on opportunities, not only for our students, but also our staff. And no change comes without its tension points. And we know that, our staff want the ability to engage, to help inform the decision-making as well as the community. and outside of Red Clay, and I'm sure we'll discuss it, but there's also other conversations about consolidating the county as a whole and where those students go. Give just a data point through the work through Reading, and not to dismiss what we're doing with McCain, but about 3,700 or so high school age students reside in the city of Wilmington. Part of a study or analysis that was done from the American Institute of Research, they went to 37 different high schools. So when we talk about community, how do we establish community, the other decision that we're thinking and how we are looking at this innovation center is how are we providing co-curricular, extracurricular activities for students. Many of our students, unfortunately, if you don't have sub-varsity sports, because ninth graders have to play varsity sports just to fill a roster spot. We can't offer sports offerings at all of our comprehensive high schools for various reasons. The number of waivers that I've had to file or appeal for to allow students who may attend one school to play a sport at another school. And so all of those things are why we're making the decisions that we're making and why we're looking at how we're investing in resources. And again, we're not without our, I guess I would say, some would say our shortcomings are not really engaging or looking at engaging people. We have various committees and work groups that are stood up to engage, to inform that work as we move forward. But the reality of it is we are a microcosm as a district in terms of where the state is as a whole. So, yes, ma'am.
Just one clarifying question. Will students go full days, 4 years?
So no, they won't. So because of the way that Delaware is structured, students have to take or participate in career technical education pathways. So the Innovation Center was where they would go to do their CTE, their career technical education work. So ninth grade, so for the students that would be at the John Dickinson School or Alexis I. DuPont, they would in essence spend their 4 years pretty much at their school, but they would do their CTE, career technical education pathways, primarily in their sophomore and junior year at the McCain Innovation Center, with their senior year being a co-op opportunity, to do advanced coursework, get career certification. And, again, we have the adage that you know everyone in Delaware. So my youngest daughter, who's a sophomore at the Conrad School of Science, she plays travel volleyball, and happened to have a conversation with one of her, a parent of her teammate. And we were stuck in Atlantic City for a 3-day tournament, tired of listening at whistles for this volleyball tournament. And so as we were both looking for a recess, I said to her, I was like, your daughter, her personality is so infectious. Like, her daughter is the cheerleader of the team, and she was like, oh, she says that she's that way at school. And I was like, oh, where does she go to school? And she said, McCain. I was like, oh. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, do I tell her I'm the superintendent? So, I expressed her, I said, I'm the superintendent. She was like, you'll be surprised how much grief we get because we chose to send my daughter to McCain. She said, my son graduated from Sally's, but my daughter wants to be a vet. And so she's at the animal science pathway. But she said to me, she's a senior, and right now she has early out, which basically means her schedule isn't full as a senior. So a couple days a week, she's just coming home early. And the ability for us to look at that senior year for our students to have the opportunity, not only through multiple pathways, but to really look at how do we look at credentialing and certification and career opportunities is really the impetus and the vision behind that work. So ninth graders would take exploratory so that they don't have to make a decision around the career technical education pathway in ninth grade year, take that coursework for their CTE, career technical education program in that sophomore and senior year with work-based learning, co-op career opportunities that senior year. So that's the vision behind it. You're welcome.
Deanna Valera. I have a passion for education, 27 years experience, so I'm not retired. Just can we get some clarification on to the vision, what the vision is for the Reading Consortium, how it's projected to be rolled out as a plan in education? There have been tried many different factors of things that haven't been successful. What are the measures that are going to determine how something's going to be successful, the determining factors, and over what timeline? And what entity will be accountable? I say that also as a sense of taxpayer who's property taxes.
Ms. Malecki is a retired Red Clay educator, so I will allow Mr. Den to introduce himself and then.
And I appreciate Matt being here today. He doesn't have all the answers, so whatever we can't answer, Justin's here. He's going to take questions, follow up. So don't think that your questions are going to go unanswered. But he was, sorry. Matt was kind enough to be here today, and he.
And just ran across traffic.
Yeah. So, Matt, if you want to introduce yourself a little bit and then answer the question.
Hey, good evening, everybody. I told Representative Smith this is, there's a first time for everything. This is the first time I have run across Kirkwood Highway at night in the snow. And I'd like this to be the last time as well. So I'm very pleased otherwise to see so many people come out to talk about these issues. My name is Matt Den. I am the co-chair of the Reading Consortium. Governor Carney asked me to step in as the co-chair when he was governor, and Governor Meyer has been kind enough to let me stay on. I'm also the parent of two now 21-year-old boys who have been through Delaware schools in just about every possible variety, traditional public school, charter school, private school, VOTEC school. I just on my way up here dropped one of them off at Del Tech where he is taking a class right now. It was on the president's list last semester. And I will also happy to be leaving a little early tonight to pick him up. So I was an elected official for quite a while. I was very involved in public education during that time, but also have had sort of a front row seat to it, raising my own kids. With respect to the Reading Consortium, I'll say up front, I'm the co-chair. I'm also one of 25 voting members, and they are all very experienced in different areas and all have their own strong opinions about how things ought to go. And in fact, the direction that we're going in terms of consolidating all the districts is not the direction that I personally was leaning towards us going in. But now that that's what the consortium has voted to do, I'm very determined to help the consortium put together a really solid plan for doing that. That's going to be great, not only for kids who live in Wilmington, but for kids throughout northern Newcastle County. I heard the governor say during his State of the State speech, and I'm glad that he said it, that when he was talking about the Reading Consortium, he said that changing district lines alone is not going to solve the problems with Delaware schools, and I very strongly believe that. So I think most of the important work that the Reading Consortium has to do over what's going to be an extended period of time, it's going to take quite a while for us to put together a proposed plan to send to the state school board and ultimately to the General Assembly. A lot of the work that we have to do, aside from making sure that we put together the structure of the school district that's going to be workable in terms of the nuts and bolts of having schools operate properly, getting kids to school, ensuring that things like school choice really is school choice for all students. Aside from all those things, I'm very interested as one of 25 members in what other things we're going to talk about doing in the schools to make sure that they are improved for all students. And I'll just throw out at you some of the things that have already been talked about and put into formal proposals that we're looking at adding on to what the final plan would be. Expanding outside school time programs for students in some of our schools so that they can come to school earlier, stay in school later, have expanded summer learning time. These programs, when they're done well around the country, have shown real concrete results in terms of students' academic performance, attendance, discipline records. So we want to look at doing more of that and doing it better in our schools. Having some innovative programs that are located in schools that right now may be challenged in terms of students wanting to attend. There are programs that, some of which are based on programs that right now are only available to students in certain school districts that we think could be potentially very attractive to parents throughout northern Newcastle County. Programs targeted at students who are able to perform above grade level, that are capable of doing really accelerated work and who aren't being challenged enough in their current classrooms. Students with special needs who may not be getting the services that they could truly use in the schools and in the programs that they are now in and could use more focused programs. Incentives for some of our best teachers to teach in schools that they might not otherwise be looking to teach in. There's a whole list what are called discretionary recommendations that we are looking at. And I think that's going to be a very important part of what we put together and what we ultimately propose. In terms of, you had asked the question of, sort of how's this going to go. We're at the very beginning of the process, and there was a lot of attention, understandably, paid to the initial decision, which was what are the district lines going to look at. But that's just the beginning of the work, and there's a very detailed 13 category plan that has to be put together even before we get to these discretionary recommendations. That has to be put together in a fair amount of detail, and our intention is for that to happen in a very public way, in a very open way, with multiple iterations of it being made available for people to look at and have input as we go along. Because ultimately, this is a plan that has to be approved by the General Assembly, and the General Assembly, as you can see by the fact that this form is being put on, that you are all here, the General Assembly members are very interested in what their constituents have to say about what's done with our schools. So it's really incumbent on us to put together a plan that is going to make sense and be attractive to people who live throughout the state. And part of doing that is listening and being responsive to people as we move forward. So I don't know if that's specific enough in terms of your question, but our meeting that's coming up later this month, a fair amount of that meeting is going to be devoted to laying out exactly how the process is going to work going forward.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that? So there's pretty clear evidence throughout the country, places like Connecticut, Detroit, Memphis, where consolidation has pretty obviously failed, and places with successful education numbers such as Massachusetts, where they haven't done consolidation, and they've been much more focused on classroom level initiatives, teacher accountability, literacy efforts, and things like that. So why is Delaware pursuing an education reform effort that has had demonstrated failures in other areas throughout the country, and not pursuing a model such as Massachusetts, where they have not pursued consolidation and they focused on classroom level efforts?
Well, and I may have not been articulate enough about it. I think we ought to be also focusing on classroom level efforts. And when I talk about the discretionary recommendations, that's what I'm talking about. The consolidation by itself and the moving of the district lines, that in a vacuum, I would agree, there's no magic to, again, I speak as one of 25 people. I speak as one of 25 people, but I don't think that standing alone does solve the problem. And I think the governor was pretty direct about that in his State of the State also. So, I mean, I would encourage you as the process moves forward, to the extent that there are programs that you view as being successful in Massachusetts or other places, to offer those up, and hopefully they can become part of the ultimate plan that we propose.
Here we go, right over that.
Back to the Innovation Center McCain, what does that mean for a Meadowwood program?
So part of the impetus around the Meadowwood program, so right now our Meadowwood Middle School program is situated at H.B. DeVont Middle School. And so what I was looking at straight line feeder patterns, the students who participated in the Meadowwood program, actually we were relocating that to A.I. DeVont High School, and those students would be transitioning with their peers. So currently as it states now, they're spending time in middle school, the way that the program is structured. The vision behind it is they would be matriculating to A.I. DeVont High School, because HB Middle would then be a straight line feeder that would go to AI, as well as AI Middle, and students that would go to Stanton, Skyline, their feeder high school would be Dickinson, because currently right now, our 8th graders are fragmented just in terms of where they go to high school based on address. So the Meadowwood program, in essence, would be relocated to.
Would they then be lost to McCain for any reason?
So it would depend on if they were participating in a CTE career pathway. They would have opportunities to do that. I mean, that would be opportunities to do it, but typically that Meadowwood program, as it stands now, would be relocated to AI High School. Mr. Fackenthal?
Hi everyone, Steve Fackenthal, music teacher at Ritchie and president of the Red Clay Education Association. I'm going to take this in a different direction. Burnout is a huge issue among educators. Less and less prospective students are entering teacher preparation programs. So I'm curious whether as a district, as a state, what ideas are there out there to attract and retain our educators? The Public Education Compensation Committee is doing great work, but money is not all of it. So whether regarding working conditions, leadership, class size, what other things are out there, ideas to attract and retain our educators, not just as a district, but as a state?
So I'll let Secretary Martin speak to at the state level, but a part of what we are doing, and I think we've done some or attempted to do some innovative work and really looking at students who are in the Teachers Academy pathway, with how we can actually help them become teachers. I think the other difficult thing is it's hard to be what you don't see. And most often students are competing for things that they deem to be more, I'm going to say in terms of earnings, how we look at education. I'm an educator, my wife's an educator, and as much as we want to pour education into our children and say you too should be an educator, they see, to your point, Mr. Fackenthal, the reality and the hardship. My wife is probably going to be at a computer until 10 o'clock tonight. That's the last thing my daughters want to do. And then we also talk about recruitment. I think we got to do a better job of showing the economics of education in terms of promoting what are the benefits of education and not so much always promoting the hardships, because I think that puts a mindset in folks, and I think the public can help us do that. It's easy sometimes for us to point out what's wrong, but it's very difficult sometimes, or seems a challenge for folks to promote it. So really looking at our Teachers Academy, as I said, we have students who went through our Teachers Academy who then we looked at hiring them in the summertime. They became pairs, and now some of them are actually employed within our schools. How do we look at differentiating and looking at the para to educator pipeline? Majority of our teachers who we're hiring now are alternative route certification, so they're second career individuals, those who may have come from private sector who then determined they want to be teachers, and I'm sure the secretary can speak to the number of approvals that she has to do across the state as it relates to ARTC, and that becomes some challenges. We have residency models, so that's they don't get burnt out. How can we put student teachers in a position so that within that first 3 to 5 years, they're not leaving the education or the workforce? We see a lot of that. They start in education and determine that it's not for them. So now they're going to other career options. So I think for us really to look at the economics of it, how do we create a true pipeline through our Teachers Academy? How do we look at para and or other alternate routes to certification for educators? And then more importantly, really attracting our leaders now. We just had the ability yesterday through all of our high schools to have well over 60 to 65 high school students from across the district. A great opportunity to tap into that leadership potential right now. Again, my oldest daughter wants to be an occupational therapist. She's going to be a great teacher. She just doesn't know it yet. And I think sometimes we have to really tap into that potential and get them early and really look at the benefits of what education can provide, and not always, I think, casting that light that sometimes, because it is hard work, and I take my hat off to all of our educators, because again, I see it day in and day out from my wife's perspective.
Real quick, so thank you for that question. Now, I'm going to preface what I'm going to say with anytime you use the University of Delaware as an example, not most, but a bulk of those people are leaving our state and not working here after I say that. But the number one major that is the largest incoming class next year is elementary education. So that was something I was actually felt great about because I didn't realize that was the case. I also want to preface that I have a colleague that I think emails Secretary Martin pretty frequently about AI and how we implement that in education. My wife's a teacher as well, so we talk about it a lot. But I look at one of the issues we have is the same with nurses. They get burnt out a lot too because the IP, the paperwork, it's very similar of all the extra work that it is to actually be a nurse these days. And I know how much paperwork my wife has, so I know how much you guys must have too. And so if we can integrate some of those things properly in a way to make it better, especially for the work-life balance and at home versus maybe preparation, application, and then classroom behavior and everything is a completely different story based off your question. But I do think there's models out there that we could use and maybe even do pilot programs to potentially offer districts money to try it if they'd like to. And that's something people are looking at.
Since there's a state component to your question, I'll answer that part as well. this is a topic that's near and dear to me about attracting and retaining teachers into the profession. Given I already said I've been a teacher for 38 years, I don't understand why anyone wouldn't want to be a teacher, but I do understand because I know how difficult it is. The eve before I started my first year of teaching, I asked a woman who was about to retire after 42 years in teaching. I said, "Can I take you to lunch? I have a question for you." She said, "Sure." Went to lunch and I said, "I'm about to start the career that I've been dreaming of since I was 5 years old. I knew I wanted to be a teacher since I was a little girl. I've heard about this thing called teacher burnout. I can't ever imagine being burned out because I'm so excited to get my teaching credential and start tomorrow, my first day of school. I've been dreaming about it. How did you do it? You've done it for 42 years and you're not burned out." Because she seemed as excited on her 42nd year as I imagined she was on her first, always learning, always. And I'll never forget what she said to me. She said, "Cindy, the fact that you're asking me that as you enter into the profession means you are curious and you're going to continue to ask questions and be a learner. That's what's kept me going." Okay, that's a simple story. That's a personal story. The bigger problem is what is happening. I don't believe teachers are leaving the profession. I believe they're leaving the working conditions. It's the working conditions when we say we have a teacher shortage, but I will say Delaware actually is doing best in the country in this. In my role as Deputy Secretary at the U.S. Department of Education, we actually recognize Delaware as being the state that did the best in attracting and retaining teachers recovering from the pandemic in the teaching profession. So if we can get the teachers in through the alternative routes, through the para support, through all of these great pathway programs that we have, keeping them is about having the working conditions be right for teachers. They will tell you every single day, it is not just about the pay. They want support in the classroom. They want time to work together. So we're looking at models. University of Arizona has a model that's been replicated over 60 times. It's not simple team teaching model. It's collaborative teams where teachers are responsible for groups of students together. You get a paraprofessional, you get a parent that's on the team, you get other people working together, and then all of a sudden the burden is no longer on one teacher, one classroom, close the door and hope you make it. It's actually, there's multiple models now that work. That takes investment, that takes time and pouring into our educators, and we have, fortunately, good examples of where it can go well, and let's just keep pouring into those because it works.
Just to give Matt and the Reading Consortium a shout out real quick, I used to be on the Reading Consortium for 4 years as well, and teacher recruitment and retention was one of the top things that we worked on then. And what we found was there wasn't a lot of exit interview data of why teachers were either leaving the profession, leaving the state, or switching districts. And Pate was actually number 3 at the time, which I think shocked us a little bit, right? Number 1 has been school leadership. So you need to make sure the leaders in your school have your back. I think we all feel the same way about that as work, right? So I think there's professional development opportunities for leaders as well to make sure that they have the right demeanor, components, everything to be school leaders, because we really want those people to come up through the pipeline when they're done and stay there. And I went into a bunch of schools afterwards. Shout out to Representative Williams. We kind of codified the Grow Your Own programs and other things that we modeled through the Reading Consortium. So I do think good work's there. Number 2, though, on the exit interview data was safety conditions, and it was more of safety. The teacher didn't feel safe with the student. And so there are some bills coming out this year around like a teacher's bill of rights and some other things that are being floated out there now that some people have read. I'll share it with you. Sorry. Crap. It's got in trouble. But more, it goes into the teacher's bill of rights component. It goes into the safety component, some of the assault type things that are happening in schools from some of the data that we've seen. Because one thing we talk about sometimes, especially with IEP, it's really tough to manage a child once they're on an IEP, and that's when number 2 really comes in handy, right? And so I think we all kind of need to band together on that one, because that one's a lot harder to solve. But shout out to Reading, because you guys have done a really good job looking into that. Who had the question? Yes, in the back.
How you doing? Appreciate you guys coming together and giving us a chance to talk about all this stuff. I got a point to make. I think the Reading experiment is one of the solutions. It's probably long-term. And in short-term, we still have to deal with the school board. I mean, I was kind of raised in a corporate environment, and everything I did in my career was based on performance metrics. You know what I mean? And I'm not seeing that with our current system with a school board. It seems like we go through these referendums, but our test scores are still coming down. So I think we gotta do something short term to try to fix, we can't keep doing this over and over and over and get the same result. So one way I wanna look at it is say, before you get a referendum, we gotta have better test scores. If we have a default on a budget like we just did in the school district I'm in, then it's time for us to make a decision on the school board president and the superintendent. So this is some of the things I want to throw out there and say, yeah, I live my life under performance metrics, but I think the school districts are getting away with it, you know what I mean? By not improving these test scores. So I wonder what we can do, what thoughts we can have when you go back in your groups and say, hey, we got to do it. And the other thing too is, a lot of parents, I went to middle school to sit in the class with my son one day, and it is, a teacher is an education specialist. But in middle school, they're also a behavior specialist. So we got to figure out how we can improve that behavior and keep it from distracting kids that want to learn. So that's some of the thoughts I've had over the years about school districts. So.
I sat down and I prepared something that I'd like to read, which I think will address the teachers, the students, and some other things as well. And it does have a question at the end, so I'm not going to take a whole lot of time. I just want to read through this if I can. My name is Byron Hobson. I'm a lifelong Delaware resident, educated at Red Clay Schools, and I earned my undergraduate degree in psychology from the University of Delaware in 1998. In math, Delaware ranks near the bottom nationally in long-term recovery to pre-pandemic achievement levels. And no district has returned to 2019 proficiency. I believe a major cause of this is instructional design that overloads early learners and teachers, delaying fluency and mastery of basic skill sets. Math is a clean test of this because math itself is universal. 2 + 2 are 4, and 2 times 4 are 8. What matters is the framing surrounding the math. Tonight, I brought with me a copy of Ray's New Primary Arithmetic for Young Learners, which was written in 1877, 150 years ago. There is an entire series of these Ray's textbooks. This particular book teaches counting, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division by focusing entirely on numerical fluency through repetition for mastery. There is no unnecessary narrative, visual noise, or categorization competing for attention. Instruction emphasizes synchronous whole class practice, spoken tables, repetition, and written drills. So fluency was achieved before abstraction. What's important is that this book doesn't show arithmetic problems. It also provides explicit one-page instructions to teachers. It warns that pictures are inferior to identical movable objects, such as marbles, emphasizes rapid counting, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division tables until they become automatic. It instructs teachers to teach one concept at a time, thoroughly, before moving on. In other words, it deliberately minimizes extraneous cognitive load, so students can achieve fluency through focused, healthy, collective practice. This principle is not unique to math. It applies to all foundational repetition-based learning: reading fluency, phonetics, spelling, handwriting, and basic computation. In each case, automatic recall must precede higher order thinking. When students are forced to process stories, imagery, or context before foundational skills are automatic, working memory is overloaded and fluency is delayed, or worse yet, never achieved. This is not a theory. It is well-established principle of cognitive psychology.
30 more seconds.
By contrast, all right, so I'm going to skip. I have some other things I would like to do. So I'll end with a simple request. Will you authorize a transparent historical audit of our curricula from pre-1900 through today, beginning with arithmetic, so we can determine what changed, including instructional and frameworks, right? When those changes occurred, what the pre-pupil costs were at each major curriculum shift, and whether these changes are actually serving our children. I offer this textbook for your initial review as a concrete starting point for that math audit. I also have the Eureka Math grade PK Module 1 curriculum pulled up on my iPad as well for side-by-side comparison. I invite everyone here this evening to come examine how arithmetic taught in 1877, 150 years ago, compares to how it's taught
Thank
today.
you. All right, we're going to start, we'll go with Secretary Martin and Darrell, and maybe we can talk a little bit about on how we, so first off, Delaware's a local control state, but maybe we can talk about the curriculum side from DOE to districts as maybe an education for people.
Well, that it's a local control state is that we don't decide curriculum from the Department of Education. And so authorize an audit like that, that is school board by school board, districts making decisions about that. I will say, we know what good math instruction looks like. We know what good literacy instruction looks like. Foundational skills matter, and mastery of foundational skills can be embedded in high quality teaching. Our math results are not talked about that much, but actually in terms of the NAEP scores, we did have the highest growth in math, NAEP, not in reading and literacy. We have plenty of things that we need to improve upon, but there are some best practices in place for math that are showing improvement. And we gotta take what's working and do more of what's working. The things that are not working, you have a back to basics philosophy there. Get back to the basics, make sure they learn the mastery, and then build from there. And ask every single teacher. My teachers are nodding, going, yes, we understand how important the basic skills are in literacy, in numeracy, in science. There are basic skills in arts education. There are basic skills in human interaction and language. So they belong everywhere.
My point is, please come take a look at this book versus this afterwards. I beg you.
So I have a different perspective with respect to how much testing we do. I feel like,
Me too.
yeah, we agree. And I don't think that we have the right state assessment. I don't believe in smarter balance. I believe teachers aren't given the ability to teach and love teaching because they're teaching to a test. Here. Thank you. Yeah. I believe that all kids come in at different levels, and we can't expect all kids to be at the same level at the same time, and that's what we're doing. I would personally like to see a growth model so we can see that growth is happening. Because we're looking at proficiency, and that is where we want the children to be, but it's important to see that there's growth taking place. Because if there's no growth, they're never going to get to proficiency. The SAT is a test that is given to every 11th grader, and then we're compared to every state in the nation that only tests 2%. So here we're testing every child in public school in 11th grade, and then we're being compared to states that test 2% because they're the kids that go on Saturday that want to go to college. And it's not a fair assessment of where we're at. I know there's great things that are going on in our classrooms. Both of my kids had IEPs, went through special education, went through the Red Clay school system. I love everything that they got through the system. And they were both, went to college and are successful. And I believe that early intervention is the key to success for children early, especially in the reading. And maybe in a minute, Secretary Martin could talk about the bills that we have passed. So I'm very proud of the bills that we've passed. I have worked really hard with my colleagues in passing teacher residency, teacher apprenticeship, grow your own, teacher academy. These are all bills that Mike and I and my colleagues have worked together that have really helped create the strong teacher, I guess we're like to really get teachers, you just don't want teachers that one day wake up and say, hey, I want to be a teacher. You want them to have that love for it, but also like when they're in high school to learn more about what the teacher academy is. And I had someone who was a constituent who wanted to go to high school in Red Clay, didn't know what high school to go to, and she ended up, I went to McCain, we toured McCain, and she fell in love with McCain. And she ended up doing the teacher academy there. And she left, I think she worked one summer at Brandywine while she was at McCain, and then she graduated, and now she is at Note as a paraeducator, and she's going to become a teacher, and she's going to be a fabulous teacher. And she will stay in the teacher profession because of all the tools that we're giving them. And so we've worked on evidence-based reading, and I'd like Secretary Martin to talk about that. Senator Sturgeon and I have done several bills around that to help bring up our reading scores. And if you could, sure.
Sorry, weird moment of housekeeping. Gary Howard, your car is blocking the detox area, so we need you to just move it and block something else. It's fine. I'm sorry to mention that. So Gary Howard, if you're here, if you could do that, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
They didn't run their license plate yet.
My car is definitely blocking something, so it might be next, because I wanted to get in there. So I don't know my license plate, so hopefully they run it and tell me I gotta go move it. I gave my key to Alex, so she can move it if I'm blocking something. Look, I need to say thank you to the General Assembly. The work that got done before I got here, I'm able to build on now as your Secretary of Education. This state has committed to doing all of the things that we know work in transforming education. There are best-in-class examples. And so I can name the bills, the Educator Preparation Program, SB 133 and 252. Keely's here, she's implementing those right now. That's getting the universities to graduate teachers better prepared to be able to teach. That mattered. What I know is that we cannot legislate or appropriate our way only into the best outcomes. But if we don't have the right legislation and the right appropriation, we also can't just teach our way. You need both. And Delaware has done that. Delaware has had sustained leadership. I've made myself a student of what got done here before I got here. Representative Williams, Senator Sturgeon, fierce advocates for education that have done their homework before they pass something. They talk to superintendents, they talk to teachers, they talk to parents. They look at national best practice, they collaborate across the country, and then they figure out a meaningful way to make the investments from a legislative perspective, from a budget perspective. And so I see it as Delaware having built this strong foundation, but a strong laws, aligned policy, and significant funding. That being in place matters. Now we have to build. Because we have an assessment system right now that only looks at proficiency, we need to look at growth, which is currently built into the Delaware School Success Framework. That is our federal accountability program. Growth is built into there, but we don't pay attention to it. All we talk about is proficiency. And right now, when you just talk about proficiency, we're not where we want to be. But because Delaware moves so quickly, science of reading has been adopted. Right now, 87% of districts and 75% of charters have already adopted the high-quality instructional materials. That is ahead of the 2027-2028 deadline that was put into statute when they passed that law. This right now is about urgency. Because adoption, that's real progress, but it's not the finish line. Now, this is about implementation. So from the Department of Education's perspective, in partnership with our school leaders, it's about implementation, tier 1 instruction in the classroom. You can buy the best tool in the world, but if you don't know how to use it, and you're not getting feedback with data, on-time data, leading indicators that are formative assessments for students, none of it's gonna work. And so we're the first in the country that has this National Literacy Implementation Dashboard so that we can monitor the implementation of the good laws that you've passed. You've done the hard work in the General Assembly. Schools now, it's about implementation and monitoring that implementation as we go. So we're targeting our supports. We're learning from the implementation dashboard what is missing in the best implementation. And we're learning what's missing are very specific things that are needed. We need materials, training, coaching, leadership, and accountability all working together. That's how Delaware moves, but we have a very strong foundation. I've taken all of the things, all the investments that have been made before I got here, and I think 4 big strategies. Investing in our educators, 3, I won't give numbers, but I've got all the data here. Building sustainable capacity, accountability, and supporting families. And there's key laws and investments that have been made in each one of these things to move Delaware forward. We are primed to do the right things for kids in Delaware.
I first want to talk as a former teacher in Red Clay for 20 years and sort of defend our teachers here that a lot of our time in the classroom is spent on discipline and putting cell phones away and so forth, which takes away a lot of class time for the teachers. And I'm so happy that legislators are finally passed the cell phone bill, and hopefully we can enforce that evenly across the board, every school, consistently. It is an issue. It does take away from learning. And support from administrators at the school level, district level, it's going to be very important that we look into that, because again, it's one of the top 3 things that teachers say that is an issue in the schools: cell phones and discipline. My wife is also a retired teacher from AI Middle, a spec ed teacher, and every night I go to bed 11 o'clock. She was still up doing IEPs and so forth. Apparently, if you get a certified in spec ed, then you no longer need a para or anyone in the classroom with you. So it's like a detriment. You don't get able to pay for it, but you get more work. So that's something you can look at also. Now, as a school board member, someone back there said we should enforce whether scores and so forth. Well, we are trying to hold accountable district. That's their job, is to work on those issues. And if they don't, then we have to hold them accountable one way or another. The SATs that we looked at school-wise, I have proctored many SAT sessions, and a lot of kids who aren't college-bound, they're done in 5 minutes on those SAT tests. But we require everybody to take it. So I'm glad that the legislators are again looking at getting rid of that as one of our metrics, because it's not fair on a lot of our schools. You know, our higher level schools, our magnets and charters do well because they're college bound. Our other schools do not do well because they want to make a living when they get out. So they just finish the test without even looking at it. So a couple things I just wanted to say. And thank you for listening.
Yes, ma'am in the back.
Hi, so I'm an educator and I also have 4 children that have gone through the Red Clay school system. And my question goes back to literacy. As a special education teacher, I think one of the biggest issues that we're facing, and reading is such a problem, is that 1 in 5 kids, research shows, has some form of dyslexia. We have somewhat of a screener, but as educators and as school psychologists, we can't label the children with that. And the problem that is coming back that we're facing day to day in our classroom is we have these very bright students who struggle to read because they're not able to read in a normal fashion. And so tier 1 is great, but tier 3 and tier 2, especially tier 3, is what's pulling down the scores. People talk about proficiency. There are so many components to proficiency. It's not just take a test and you know what you're doing. And also, we're working with kids, we're working with people every day, all day. And so it's not something where you can just sit down, give them a piece of paper, and think that it's going to work. We are in the job of working with people, so we have to build relationships in conjunction with teaching their academics. And if we don't have that relationship with that child, with that family, with our administrators, we're not going to get far anywhere. And part of our job is not just educating academically, but teachers wear so many hats in a day. There are times when I leave and my own kids, I'm like, I need a minute. In the classroom, there are times where we have to show them ourselves how to regulate, because they're coming to school with so many different things. Our world is not what it used to be. Like, it is not something, yes, they have screens and all these other things that are affecting it, but it's beyond that. But my concern and my main reason for wanting to come tonight is the concern that we don't have, yes, science of reading is helpful and we have some things that are supporting it, but those kids with those reading issues, their needs are not being met. And it's not for lack of teacher training, it's a combination of that, but we need the appropriate materials to teach these kids who learn in a different way. So my question would be, what can we do as a state in Delaware to recognize? Because we label these kids as learning disabled when really it's not that, it's a reading issue.
So can I kind of piggyback all of that? So my grandson is special education at he's 7 years old. He's very smart, but it is not verbal, developmentally delayed, but is so smart. But that's one of my concerns. As a Delaware resident, I mean, I went to we're in the special education environment, I'm seeing that there's a big gap all the way around with special education in Delaware. And kind of like what she said, these teachers are doing more than just teaching. I'm fortunate, my grandson goes to school as a nurse, so he has pretty much a one-on-one, but there's kids in that classroom who require a one-on-one pair up. So even though there's 3 pairs in the room and the teacher, if there's 7 or 8 kids and 3 of them all need a one-to-one, and all of the students in there need one-to-ones in order to do math, to do any of these things, their specific goals, the resources aren't there. So in addition to the training for teachers throughout the district and state, I think there really needs to be a focus on special education and fix those loopholes, because those students are going to end up suffering in the long run, even more than they already are.
So I think the screeners are critical when we talk about students. I would be safe to say, to your point, that there's likely misdiagnosis of students who might sometimes are learning disabled that may just need various interventions and or supports. I would also say we need to start with early childhood. I know we've expanded a lot of our early childhood services in Red Clay since I've been here, but the challenge is there's very little resource. So right now, there's no room in the end for our early learning center. We do not get capital funding from the state to build early learning centers.
Something I've been saying for the past few years is, I know they're different than some families and they're hands-on, but getting it to families before they hit that age. I mean, I would have had some of these resources, I would have worked on things with him from the time he came to live with us.
Well, and again, we do have birth to 3 mandates in Delaware, and so working with community partners, community peers, but a lot of it again is when students have those developmental delays, most often we're triggering ourselves to go right to, let's diagnose and identify rather than intervening, providing the supports, especially at that foundational level, whether that would be through appropriate screeners, but then more importantly, appropriate resources. One of the things in working with the department that we're looking at is what does that coaching support look like, right? Again, we hear that the burden oftentimes falls on the classroom teacher, but if I'm a classroom teacher who's dual certified, which many of our educators, if they're spec ed certified, they now hide the fact that they're special ed certified because of just the nature of the number of students who start behind in terms of they don't have that foundation and then they're left to catch up. And that's becoming more proportionate across the whole because again, we provide devices and just next time you go out to dinner, next time you go out in the community, watch how many toddlers and infants are stuck with a device in their hand. And they're swiping. And so they're digital natives. And so the reality of it is, you know, we are an open choice state. If you look at per capita, the number of private, parochial, or independent schools we have in our district, it becomes an unfair judgment a lot of times on the work that our educators are doing because we are looking at SAT. And now we're cross comparing schools that aren't apples to apples in essence because again, we're promoting career technical education pathways. So we're telling these students to go directly to the workforce, but we're holding ourselves accountable to an assessment that has little to no value to them. Similar to our proficiency assessments in terms of how we're looking at proficient students, to the Secretary's point, and I'm thankful that she's embraced and really looked in and has lifted up the hood, she's kicking the tires, she's doing everything that she can to learn about all that is in Delaware, really looking at our Delaware School Success Framework in terms of how we actually are looking at growth and proficiency so that we can intervene and use strategic interventions in terms of providing those rudimentary, foundational, mastery level supports to students. But it takes all of us. It really does take all of us. We have more grandparents as relative caregivers, more so now than ever. So the impacts to the community where they're just hoping that they can get them to school safely, we feed them, and that they come back home safely. And a lot of those supports aren't necessarily there. So holistically, I think a lot of good, valuable points that are being raised. Justin is taking notes. And so we'll make sure, but again, I think it's not a perfect system. And again, I think from the screeners in terms of how we identify students, but more importantly, provide that classroom supports through interventions. And we have to catch them earlier than we are in terms of that early learning preschool opportunities for students across the state.
And once again, the General Assembly took action on this very point. It was in HB 304. It was narrowing Delaware's mandated universal screening list. There were over 40 screeners in use. We have some best-in-class screeners, so what are the best ones? How can we narrow that down? Like I said, you can legislate it, we've got to implement that. Get that more narrow, give teachers the tools they need, get their hands-on. I'm a sister of a developmentally disabled adult. My brother went through school with severe developmental disabilities. You have to teach students at the point of need, and teachers need those tools. We know through screeners when a student needs a certain intervention. But having 40 is just too many. So we need a more concise list that's going to enable us to actually act with more urgency and targeted to the students.
Real quick, and then we're going to go to you. One thing we also have to do is take accountability as a community to help like our neighbors and people that need help, those that are grandparents and others. We can't expect the school to solve all of our problems. We're asking the teachers to do more than they ever have. I've seen that. My wife has taught pre-K, alternative behavior kids, charter school kids, traditional public school kids, and everything in between. And the fact of the matter is, mom and dad are both working, or the grandparents working, and they don't have the same supports maybe as some of us did growing up. And you also have to take into account, my middle son's a good example, the kids that started during COVID. They didn't have school, and if they didn't have parents that were able to dive that time into them at home, they are behind still, and teachers are trying to get them caught up. So we have to be fair here. We can't unpack everything and expect immediacy in some of these cases, because I do think we speak badly about teachers sometimes as a society. We do the same with cops and other things as well, based off like one example when everybody's working their tail off to do what they can. But we are asking educators to do a lot more than we ever have before, and we can't expect some laws to just fix that sometimes when we're asking them to do more with those laws. So sorry for my TED talk. Yes.
Maybe Sean, I don't have school-age children. For literacy is a big thing for them. It's really a huge opportunity. I don't think we're tapping into the community. You go to Mike's meetings, and to see a grade and Mike in my face.
I have grade 2 though. That's not even fair. Yeah. I'll repeat it when he's done. Go ahead. Justin, here you go. Justin's taking notes and running the microphone. He deserves a.
So I came from Jersey, and I used, I was part of Literacy Volunteers up in Jersey, and I had tremendous opportunities. I taught a 19-year-old who got all the way through school and could not read, and taught him how to read, watched him get a job. But as part of teaching, that kind of mentoring level teaching, when he misspoke, I stopped him. You know, when he used the wrong tense, I stopped him. When he told me at 19 he didn't really care when he lived past 21, I stopped teaching him for a week and told him, I'm not wasting my time with somebody who's not going to get 80 years of my time, education that I've given him. I came down here and I tried to find literacy volunteers, and I think it's, you know, maybe a Leering Center, because you call, you get an answering machine, nobody calls you back. We had a lot of volunteers, and I know it's a privately funded, I think, organization. We should really tap into the organization. Fundamentally, we can talk about math, we can talk about everything. You can't learn math from numbers. You have to understand how to read. And if you read, when you read, structured reading, you also learn grammar. You learn that me and her going out later is not correct. Watch TV for a few minutes, you're gonna find out. I seen it today. So I don't know if there's any way of connecting to this enormous, I'm not making fun of Mike's group because I am one of the whitest of the group, I think. But here, yeah. But if you talk to all those people, they're former scientists, researchers, I was a software architect. There's so much to offer. And volunteerism in Delaware is pretty big. It really is. It's just not tapped by the schools. We volunteer at Children's Hospital, and even there, the tasks they gave us were, you want to color with kids who, you know, need somebody to take care of them. I brought in STEM projects. We started doing that because that's nuts to tell a 10-year-old to color with me. I don't want to color with them. So there's so much tribal knowledge out here that is not tapped, and I don't know if there's a way of connecting it up.
So just in response to the last question that was asked, I just wanted to give Representative Williams a shout out. Mentoring in Delaware for public school students, I'm gonna sound old now, but 25 years ago, was huge. And the governor then had it as a #1 priority. A lot of the biggest businesses in the state had adopted schools, were sending students, sending employees once a week to mentor students. And when he left, it wasn't a priority anymore, and it kind of ebbed away. Representative Williams has kind of picked up the torch, and there is now a website set up for the first time in 15-ish years on the State Education Department website where you can sign up in one place to be a mentor. She got money put in the budget to have the fee waived. Used to have to pay $40, $50, $70 to get a background check done to be a mentor. She got money put in the budget to have that waived for people willing to be mentors. They expanded the number of places you can go to get your background check done. You used to have to go to Troop 2. Now there's 6 or 8 different locations throughout the county where you can go to get it done. So a lot of things have been done to try to make it easier to be a mentor, and it hasn't really taken off as I do it. I go once a week to Lewis Elementary, and I mentor a kid who's in 5th grade. But it's not. So number one, I wanted to respond to your question that there is a system that works pretty well for folks who want to get into doing it. And I would love for someone else to pick it up and give it as much visibility as Governor Carper did when he was governor, because we really had lots and lots and lots of people for a while that were going into schools and doing this work, and we don't have those numbers anymore.
And also reading assist. That's excellent.
And just thank you for your time volunteering in New Jersey. Let's get you volunteering here. We have a literacy emergency. It's been declared, it's been worked on long before I got here. And if you think of an emergency, literacy is an infrastructure. We had a snow emergency, and when there's an emergency, the whole state responds. This is a literacy emergency, so that everything we're doing from Department of Ed to school leaders to in the school, responding to the emergency by improving classroom tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 instruction, all of that matters. What happens outside the classroom also matters. The response to the emergency isn't just a school's response, it's a whole of Delaware response. Recently with the governor's cabinet meeting with each of the cabinet secretaries, DENREC can put poetry on the trails. Department of Transportation can put high frequency words on the freeway signs for safety, but build in high frequency words so kids can play bingo. Everybody can do something to respond. Reading assist, other volunteer programs, the adult literacy. There is a Delaware Literacy Alliance that's bringing all of these people outside of the school to help support what's happening inside the school. So it's a whole state approach.
And I think we can do a better job of communicating what's available to the public. Because what I hear you saying, sir, is you might have tried one spot and it didn't get the response, and now so I think we can do a better job of letting the community know actually what's available.
It's very inexpensive when you think about it. I had to buy my own materials, and all I needed was a learner.
Yeah, no, and again, I think through Reading Assist or other programs, it's just, I think we got to do our due diligence to communicate more broadly in terms of what's available to the community. So thank you for that. I know this. Where you
Yeah, we're gonna go right here.
Apologize for changing the slide deck slightly. But my name is Will Dunn. I work for the YMCA at Westbury, right down the street, actually. So we're gonna talk a little bit about summer camp and kind of things that we're seeing in that area. But with school days with the school day not matching, working families' schedules. We know families with children in school need to rely on childcare providers like the YMCA. Their children are safe in our before and after school programs when school is closed for holidays and throughout the summer months in an effort to ensure families who qualify for POC, purchase of care, can access care outside of school. We work closely with our Office of Child Care Licensing to meet licensing standards for the location in which we serve children. However, the state systems do not allow school-age children who are EOC to be registered for more than one location, or 2 locations at a time. In the case of most of our children we serve, they need more than one site ID. For the school, they need more than one site ID. One site ID for the school care, days off from school, and our summer camp, as well as the school that they're attending that we have after school programs in. With the system only being able to assign 2 site IDs at a time, that means kids in school who need POC care can't enroll in camp until months after their years, which creates a situation where a lot of kids are not able to sign up for camp or summer care in advance. So what can the state do to help increase access to care during the summer months for school-age children?
I remember this conversation, we've had this conversation, and I thought we, and I thought we spoke to Caitlin. Didn't we talk about this, and I'm trying to think of what the solution was, or what there was no solution. I believe that, yeah, it's very complicated to get kids into aftercare for some reason with respect to purchase of care. And I would say that this is probably something that we're not going to resolve tonight unless you have something to add to it. Maybe we can talk offline afterwards, and if you have something.
I just had a quick question. So you guys talked about tutoring and things like that. I have home care loans, I do the registration and billing for
Right.
the schools. A lot of families always ask if we have homework help or tutoring and aftercare, and sometimes we find grants, but sometimes there aren't things that are available, or sometimes we have behavioral challenges and we can't accept the behavioral challenges in the aftercare program. But wouldn't that be a good spot for you guys to help these children learn or get their homework done after school? You know, things of that nature. We have the resources, we have the qualified staff, but we don't always have the funding available to hire the special needs early child care professional. You know, I feel like it's a good tool. We have middle schoolers that want to come to the Western YMCA, but the co-pays might be too high. And then again, they ask because there's homework help. And as they get older, you know, a lot of the work is a little confusing to a lot of parents.
It's confusing to me.
Yeah, so it would be nice to help these children, you know, and not only that, the YMCA, you know, we talk about we want to get the kids off the devices and not play with these things all the time. The Y is the place to do that after school. If they're going home, they're on their devices, they're watching TV, or they're hanging out with, you know, kids that they may not be.
Yeah, I mean, Mike, I'm sure Mike has, I've toured the programs, they're great. The purchase of care thing is, because I remember us talking about this with Caitlin, that because they're already in the purchase care program, they could not qualify for purchase of care for the summer program until they were out of the main program, and then all the spots were taken, and that was the issue.
Yeah, and
I'm trying to remember the conversation.
What happens is all the paying
Right.
customers are signing up, and what's left is like.
Right, and
they're
the kids who actually need to be there can't get in,
And then
yeah.
the kids are ended up staying at home instead of, you know, signing up for a good
Right.
quality program like the Y, where they get a lot of stuff
We
out
also,
of it.
we're also providing full lunches for kids.
Oh, you guys run a great program. You don't have to
Like,
keep us.
They also have an education.
Yes. Yeah. I think the secretary can follow up, if you don't mind with Caitlin, we'll get.
It really is a conversation that's already happened.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember, like, because I believe we had this conversation like probably last year, so I'm trying to go by memory here.
So, point of information, it was stated earlier that Ready Consortium, they're, looking at 13 categories. I don't know if we could define, if we know what they are, and how will, as things develop, be rolled out publicly, as Ready can find them, I'm assuming, maybe I shouldn't be presumptuous, that it's a comprehensive approach that includes like mental health supports.
The 13 categories are laid out in the statute. So the Reading Consortium, the statute was passed 8+ years ago, and the consortium was told, come up with a redistricting plan, and your plan has to cover at least the following 13 things. And they're things like transportation, and budget, and just sort of a lot of them are just the nuts and bolts mechanics of how a school district works. There's also allowance made for discretionary recommendations that go beyond the 13 categories, and that's where the types of things like mental health supports that you just talked about, some of the things that I was referring to earlier. There's been discussion about offering early education programs beyond what's currently offered in some of the schools. That's the forum where a lot of those things are going to get talked about in terms of what ought to be added on. And there's price tags obviously associated with all of those things, with the 13 nuts and bolts categories and with the add-ons. And that's also going to be part of the discussion is, what price tag is going to be considered manageable by the General Assembly, because ultimately that's who votes on it and that's who would have to fund it. In terms of the process, as we envision it, it's going to take place over a number of months. Different parts of those 13 required categories and the discretionary ones are going to be put out for the public in draft form. There's going to be multiple opportunities for people to weigh in. And as I said earlier, the hope is that it's going to be a process where the consortium members are able to get input and adjust plans, based in part on that input. I just view it as a great opportunity to try to do some of the things that we really ought to be doing. It's to some degree a blank slate, where since we're having to design this new district essentially from the start. And again, the district lines are a part of it, but from where I sit, just the beginning. And it really is an opportunity for people to weigh in on and what a great school district ought to look like, what types of services ought to be available that aren't currently, and ultimately have something that parents throughout the county are really pleased with.
Can I just follow? So the next milestone is your plan that will then get submitted to the General Assembly?
It first has to go to the state school board, and it only goes to the General Assembly if it's approved by the state.
Timing on that, your anticipated timing on that?
Not soon, is the best.
It's like the first pitch of the first inning.
Not decades. I am not sure that's the case. Yeah, I think there's going to be a discussion at this month's Reading Consortium meeting, which is open to the public and on Zoom, et cetera. There's going to be a discussion about what the schedule ought to be in terms of getting. We want this to be thorough, thoughtful. We want to have lots of opportunity for the public to weigh in on it. And so the discussion is going to be, what is the time frame that is required in order for that to happen? There have been other schedules that were set in the past that didn't pan out as planned. So I think we want to be very thoughtful about how we chart out what's going forward. The important thing is to have a good end product, and I think it's worth investing the time to make sure that happens.
As long as that time is timely. The discussion, I graduated from Newark in '69, and we were discussing consolidated school districts since then.
Yeah, no, I think everyone is interested in moving forward. I mean, as we talk about this, kids are moving through our school system and not getting the help that they need, and I think that ought to create a great sense of urgency for everyone who's looking at it. But if we don't take the time to put together something that is well thought out and has the input of the public, then it's going to, as other plans have, get written down and then ultimately turned down by the folks who have to approve it. And that has happened time after time over the last couple of decades, and I don't want to see that happen again with this plan.
I just wanted to go back to the Innovation Center for those who live in Red Clay. So
if you don't already know, we have 2 magnet schools in our district, Conrad and Cab, and you have to apply to get in, and not everybody's accepted. So those 2 schools in our district already have advanced level course offerings and CTE coursework. And so my question is really, and they're not being asked to travel anywhere, right? So will the students who are at AI and Dickinson have the same level of access? Coursework, electives, arts, athletics, and advanced pathways as the magnet schools? And my concern is, like, we're asking kids to travel somewhere, and some schools or other schools, they already have it. And personally, I don't know if I get on a bus in the middle of the day, that's just my own personal opinion. But I am curious if they're gonna have the same level of services.
So in essence, yes, that's why we're looking at consolidation. I think one of the things that you have to look at is it's hard for our traditional schools to actually run the programming that they do, especially when enrollment is low, because programming is driven by enrollment. And what I've experienced since I've been in this district is programs get started and then they shutter because the educator leaves and then the program leaves with the educator. And too often that happens with our traditional schools because, again, enrollment fluctuates. Program fluctuates, student interest within those programs fluctuate. And so the goal is for 21 different CTE career pathways to be offered through 7 clusters at our CTE hub or the Innovation Center, providing those equitable opportunities and access to those programs, and then more importantly, allowing them to go a little deeper to look at co-op advanced coursework and opportunities. The same can be said for AP courses and advanced coursework. A lot of those offerings, because you have to fill a section, aren't offered in our traditional schools because, again, enrollment and numbers are low, or our ability to be able to actually have the staff members teach it. I get it. I think one of the challenges that and I'm gonna just ask we can't keep pitting families and children against families and children. We're an open choice state. So if they're not gonna choose Red Clay, they're gonna choose somewhere else. And too often we vilify students, we vilify parents for making choices. We're the Red Clay Consolidated School District. My experience has been prior to, if there's an issue in the district, we solve the issue in isolation and don't understand the greater impact to the community. So now what we're dealing with and what we see at John Dickinson School, for example, because there was pushback against the feeder pattern changes in 2015 in terms of Skyline feeder pattern change. So families exited Skyline. We offered a middle years program at the John Dickinson School to house families whose feeder school is Skyline to go to Dickinson. And now what we see is we can't grow programming at Dickinson because we have 250 plus middle schoolers in there, so now the high school can't grow. When in actuality, the program should be at the traditional middle school where those students are attending. And those are hard choices and hard decisions to make. And I get it, it was made in a vacuum at a point in time when the issue was there, but no one forecasted what does that mean 10, 15 years down the road. Now when we have, again, a middle school that traditionally serves 700 to 750 children, now they're 381.
Can I
so,
get a follow-up though? Like,
yes.
I get what you're saying, but we're talking about changing an entire system. So in 10, 20 years, there isn't gonna be a comprehensive middle school that doesn't have to travel somewhere for these offerings in this area. So Red Clay, like, where are my kids gonna go to school if I don't want them to have to travel? Like on a
Well, middle school they would still go, and typically if they wanted to stay at high school, there will be some local pathways. I think that's the other thing that folks generally don't understand. There are local pathways within our schools where students may not have to travel.
But the sought after ones, like the animal science and those type of things, those aren't the ones that are the standing ones.
Well, and again, I think we're also resourced, and I think part of the challenge is, and this is the challenge that we have, and I'm going to say this from a parent perspective.
Is the other option to close the high school then? To keep
Well,
comprehensive high school?
I think inevitably what will happen is the system itself will dictate us in being forced to probably do that, right? That's why Philadelphia now is faced with closing 20 high, and this isn't just it just hasn't hit Delaware yet. If we look across the country, districts and enrollment in traditional public schools are on a decline. And we fund schools through enrollment. And the reality is, if we're not generating numbers through student enrollment and building capacity, something, and it's the same, and we have we have so many options in this district. That's not a bad thing, but then we'll compare ourselves to neighboring districts when the closest neighboring district in Newcastle County has 3 high schools.
Should we just have 3 high schools and not 2 middle schools?
And again, I think we can have choices, but we just need to be smart about the choices that we're making and look at it from a community perspective and not just in isolation.
I'm going to turn our discussion to a completely separate issue for just a minute. I am a longtime advocate, and before I was an advocate around gun violence prevention and specifically around school safety, I was an advocate for my own kids as a red clay parent, and so I want to just take a minute to say that none of this work matters if our kids aren't safe at school. And the most important thing that we can do every day is make sure that they are learning and given the opportunity to learn and grow in safe environments. And so I wanted to just say thank you to the leaders in this space today and in all of the levels of this work who are prioritizing the safety of kids. The conversation will change faster than you have ever seen if we fail at safety. And so as much as education is the priority, without safety it's not possible. So I'm really just underscoring the critical and necessary work that's been done around school safety at almost every level I can think of in Delaware. Delaware has made that a priority over the last 6 or 8 years. We are seeing those outcomes now. And so I wanted to just thank you all for that prioritization of the safety of kids, both as a parent and an advocate. So just pivoting that to
And I want to thank you for your advocacy.
Hi, my name is Ron Homa. I am not from this area. I'm from Middletown, Delaware, so it's a different school district. But I'm here because I'm a member of the Independent Party of Delaware. And obviously, this is one of the problems that we have in education today. I would like to share with you some of my thoughts, but from a different perspective. I grew up in South Philadelphia. I graduated in 1971. I dealt with race riots. We had a sophomore class of 2,200 and graduated 625 out of that class. There was no lunch period. Lunch periods were done away with because of shootings and stabbings. We had busloads of police around the school and everything. This is not something that's new. This has existed for quite some time. But my point is, in spite of all of that, I graduated in 1971 out of an academic class, and basically the classes were comprised of, you had commercial and you had academic. I went on to Penn State with a full scholarship. I did not graduate from Penn State because I decided this is not for me. Instead, eventually I wound up going into the Marine Corps, served for 7 years total, got out, had a job in the Veterans Administration for about 10 and a half months, and then took an electrical apprenticeship in Philadelphia Shipyard. I am a highly skilled tradesman. And just to prove a point, at one time, I got laid off from Boeing, and I took HVAC classes at Del Tech. And to my surprise, they stole our instructor for the Red Clay School District 2 days out of the week. And my problem with that was, I wasn't paying for the course. I was considered a displaced worker. But there was people in that class who were paying $2,000 to $3,000 that had a family. And the leg up was given to high school students. And they had to have 2 people there because they were disruptive. My point is, as a tradesman on the right, one of the things that I've noticed that's changed is I had a supervisor. That supervisor did the same job that I did. So if I needed help, I could get help from that supervisor. Today, things have changed so much that people are managers. They never did those jobs. They want to tell you how to do it, and you feel like, you think you can do it that way? I'll step aside, you show me how it gets done. Even unemployment, if you go to unemployment, you'll see the changes or whatever have been made as far as applying for a job or anything like that. The point is, things should be put in the hands of the ones that do the job. They should be here totally with you, and they should be saying, these are the problems that I have, and these are the suggestions that I'm giving to you. I don't think that other people should be making those decisions for them. How many people have heard of the No Child Left Behind, and teachers bitched and complained about it, that it was totally ridiculous? You can overthink problems. The bottom line is, there are ways to solve them. In the military, we called it problem-solving steps. You looked at an ultimate goal, and you took short-term goals to reach it. But you had to recognize what the problem was. You had to get to the root cause of it. That's all what it's about. And what's the root cause here? I graduated in 1971. I would put my education, in spite of the disruptions and everything that I had, against most of the school students today. What have you got today? You don't group people together. You don't separate a class that, okay, you got different people of different age levels or whatever, and they're remedial. We just put them all in one class. That's the way it used to work. Now you're trying to isolate it in different ways, but the world doesn't work like that. In the Marine Corps, you have to deal with people as a group. You work together as a team. And the thing is, when you march, it's to get everybody from point A to point B in a manner that it's easier. So why don't we simplify things, simplify them, and work together or whatever to resolve these issues and problems?
Yes, that's what we're trying to do. Is that the question?
But I don't hear that here. That's not what I'm getting.
Well, I would
talk.
Okay.
Well, what's the solution?
Well, one, thank you for your service. Two, I would say, one of the things that I mentioned earlier, that when you have to unpack a lot of things, you are working together to do that. If you're expecting that return right away, you can't unpack decades worth of. I mean, the last time we did reassessment, that's a great example. I wasn't born yet. So, I mean, think about how that is having a dramatic effect on our school system and our county as well. But we're all committed to doing that, but that's what we're trying to do tonight is help educate you on how it does work so we can take suggestions back. But to say to get to the root cause, there's a lot of root causes, sir, not just one, and that's kind of what the point is. I'm raising kids right now, and I know a lot of the things I'm raising my kids on are a lot different than when I was being raised, and there's a lot of root causes to that. Thank you.
Can I just say one thing more? Phones, they're a distraction. Why are there phones in the classroom?
We just banned that, and
that's a good thing.
Yeah.
If somebody needs to get a hold of their child, I'm sure they can call somebody in the school and go in that class or whatever.
You hear it on the monitor. It's the same way I heard about the OJ verdict back in the day on the monitor. There we go. All right, next question. I think we have a question right here. Go for it. Oh, yes, Susan.
First of all, Madam Secretary, I was in the classroom until I was almost 17. Thank you. I never aspired to be an administrator. I just love working with kids, and I still do as a volunteer. But one of the things is, what I'm hearing from almost everybody here, we are all here because we care about education. Not just necessarily for our own, because I don't have my own anymore in school. She's long gone. My thought is bigger. It's about the state of Delaware. And so I listened to the secretary talk about some of those curricular things, the assessments, the data. Mike, I know the work you've done. Kim, I know the work that you've done. I've been at education committee hearings. Where's the rest? Where are the rest of your colleagues? All these wonderful things that we want to do. Is everybody, this is a rhetorical question, actually, it's a stupid question. Is everybody on board? And what can we do? If we really care about public education in Delaware, what can we also do to help bring these things over the finish line?
So that's a fair question. It's not a dumb question. There's no dumb questions, by the way. No, I have another answer to that I won't share. But anyway, one, I would say no, not everybody's on the same page. I think what everyone's on the same page about, though, that I hear, if you give everyone a fair shake at it, is everyone does care about children in the state of Delaware. I've never heard one person that says they don't. Now, I do think there's a lot of variation to that on the route that people want to get there, and a lot of people have thoughts on that. And when we talk about unpacking things, there's literally decades of things. We've talked about assessments and testing and redistricting tonight. There's an education funding formula issue that we're trying to fix too. And I do think everybody's on board with that, actually. Now, I think they just need more information, right? But I think everybody's on board with the fact that we have an antiquated system that's not serving us or our schools well. And so, I will say to everybody in the room, everyone in the room is obviously engaged because you're here on your own time, but I would encourage you and your neighbors to get to know your representatives and your senators. Reach out to them. Tracy and I are grabbing coffee individually. I host meetings monthly. I know Kim does. Like, we're Democrat and Republican, but we're actually the same on pretty much everything. And one of the reasons why for that is like, I don't think there's anybody that works harder in our district or in Dover than Kim. Truly, I really don't. And so, honestly, not that endorsing her would help, but if a Republican ran against her, I probably would endorse Kim privately so she didn't get hurt by that. Maybe donate $99. But my point is, like, there's good people on both sides of the aisle that want to work on this issue. And so you should encourage that. I think we see a lot of bad behavior nationally that is seeping down locally. Don't be mistaken. It is seeping down locally. And so I think it's incumbent of all of us, whether you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, to encourage that good behavior of people working together and share those ideas. It's okay if we disagree on that. Like, Kim was a school board member. So Kim has a deeper understanding of some of the things that go into school districts than I will. I have a deep understanding. I'm not a teacher, but I've been married to a teacher whose mom's a teacher and her grandma was a teacher, and all her friends are teachers. So I get a chance to meet with them and talk with them and engage with them and listen to them. And I have kids in the system. I see what's wrong. One of the things that's deeply passionate to me that we get out of all of this is discipline and standards. I think if we don't focus on discipline, a lot of the other things that we work on won't matter because teachers won't be able to actually teach and students won't actually get to learn. It's a shame how many times I've had one of my sons come home and be like, well, I wasn't able to teach today or learn today because of what some of the kids were doing in school. It just, the teachers didn't have the time to teach me anything. And that is something that's consistent if discipline and behavior are there. And that's something that teachers have to deal with. And teachers are not babysitters, so we need to stop treating them that way. So anyway, that's how I answer that question. I don't know that everyone's on the same page because not everyone's in the same part of their life. I'm deeply engaged because I am an engaged parent. Like, I didn't have my mother or father around, so like I psychotically double down on trying to be a good father, which makes me bad at everything else. But other people don't have as engaged parents either, and we have to know that, and we have to help them. I don't know if anyone knows my upbringing, but I think it's a really good message for other people in the community. My grandmother raised me and my cousins. One of us ended up in jail permanently. The other was in and out of jail and a drug addict who's now married to a wonderful woman, and they have a family, and he overcame all of that. And I was kind of the outlier, I guess, that tried to do good. But this was a 70-some-year-old woman trying to raise a bunch of lost children because of drug addiction and families. She needed a community of people to help her. She could not do that by herself. For any of you with kids, we're Uber drivers between certain hours, right? So you literally need people to drive you around and get to things and be involved. And so we all have to help our own communities too, in neighborhoods with kids that might be on the wrong track. Invite them over for dinner, help to mentor or tutor them there, do those things. And I know a lot of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle are passionate about all of that. Like, that's where we have everything in common. So don't let the national stuff really get to you. I think everybody's in lockstep of wanting the betterment of children in Delaware. It's just things have changed since we all keep saying I graduated in so-and-so time. If you look at the birth rate now, it's a lot different than it was. career and technical education, or, I saw Nello back here with that school district. Everybody's trying to get into the trades nowadays because we told children for 20 or 30 years only to go to college. And so we're seeing that rectify through the market too. And so we're seeing a lot of things change differently, but more importantly, to go back to what I said earlier, I do think all of our colleagues do believe that teachers are doing too much and schools are taking on too much versus communities and families taking accountability for some of that as well. So I just do want to say, I think we're in a good place, but, we all have to come at it from a different way. Kim and I are pretty much lockstep on those things, education, but this redistricting thing is something that her and I are going to be talking a lot about. To me personally, I don't think geographically doing one section of one county in a state of less than 1 million people is really the right way to go. That's just my personal opinion, though, and I have a lot of reasons why I believe that, and I think we all do. And to Matt's credit, before he left, he's one of 25 members voting, and so he's going with what they said. And so, appreciate your question. Thanks for teaching till you're 70. And you're sane still. That's crazy.
And I still have a good kid.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yes.
Mike, can I just follow up your comments on discipline and ask a question to Dr. Green?
Sure.
So as a Red Clay resident whose children do not attend a Red Clay school, partly because of discipline issues, you mentioned frequently about your issues with enrollment, and I would argue that part of that is because of the cultures of the school and disciplinary issues. So, you talk a lot about, we're bringing in these programs and we're bringing in these new opportunities to students to attract more students and get our enrollment up, but what are you doing on the opposite end of that to address discipline, to give teachers more options to address disciplinary issues? Because from my perspective, restorative justice just isn't working, and there needs to be more options for direct discipline and better discipline for, again, safer classrooms, more controlled classrooms, and things like that.
So, behavior is a form of communication. Right? Said student comes to school, is responding to something. We provide teachers with resources and supports, and unfortunately, sometimes it's not a match. And the expectation is, who do we refer that child to? Where do we send that child for someone to fix them? When the reality of it is, more often now than not, when we talk about developmental delays, we put labels on children, which then requires a process that we go through as school systems and educators to provide additional supports, that proportionately, more of those children are falling in that bucket of needing those additional supports, and those additional supports comes through the traditional means of educating them that we have in our schools. So most people would say, send them somewhere else, or send them to alternative school. That's not our reality in school systems. That's not our reality in public schools. More so now than ever, we're forced to get grants because of things like the opioid epidemic. Just look at the shift in our demographics. More families now, more so than ever, are in need for basic needs than they are in terms of saying we need to focus on academics. So as much as we would love to send a child somewhere to fix them and bring them back whole, the reality of it, we have to deal with them as they come to us. We don't have the luxury of just shipping them off to somewhere else. And that's the harsh, honest truth that I'm giving you right now. As a school leader, as a superintendent, as an educator, as a father, as a mentor, as a community member. Far too often, we see children who don't have the experience that our children may be, depending on where we fall on the socioeconomic ladder or status. I mentor at one of our elementary schools. Yes, we unfortunately had to close schools for a week last week for a whole host of reasons. But when I went to talk to my mentees, I asked them, hey, did you go outside and play in the snow? No. So we had students from a basic premise. Didn't even have the experience to go outside and play in the snow. But you know what I saw? At Del Castle, along North Star, our schools became places of joy and play while we were closed for the week. So that's the reality that we confront. And it's not just necessarily restorative justice. It's we do discipline students, but then on the other hand, we get flagged for a term called disproportionality. Because now we're over-suspending school students or have exclusionary discipline practices. Or when we do implement those things, guess what? They show up anyway. So we care for them as they come, and I think to the gentleman's point that made about him mentoring a 19-year-old, we have to take this as a community approach. Most other places are solving these issues around public-private partnerships, where business community and folks are actually coming together, whether they have children in the public school system or not. And to that point that the gentleman made, that the expert made, and again, thank you for his service, are helping us solve those problems. I'll use the story of Adam. So I had an issue in my home where we had to get some flooring replaced because of a water damage. And this took about a 5-month process. And I'm on the phone with the general contractor, and he was full of excuses. And it took everything in me to not go at this man the manner in which I did, but there were 2 workers on the scene, and they were nodding as they heard me in my professional tone, and I ended the conversation. I said, listen, sir, I just want your company to do quality work on my home so that I can refer your company to someone else. I'm not here to argue where the communication breakdown, and there was a young man about my son's age, my son's 21, he was on the job site, and I said to him, hey, how long have you been working with this company? He said, a little over a year. I said, hey, if you decide you want to own your own business, just observe how to treat people and how not to treat people. This was a Friday. I left, I went on my day. I came back at lunch break just to check the status. And the young man said, hey, you're Dr. Green? I said, yeah. He said, you probably don't realize you helped me out in 2022. I said, I did? And this goes back to the conversation that we had around the Innovation Center, but it's a long-winded way of just explaining your answer, because we can't wish behavior away. We have to intentionally engage with students who don't have the leg up, who don't have the supports. And it really does take all of us. If we could ship them away and have someone magically just fix them and bring them back whole, that would be nice, but that's not our reality. And a lot of them, again, are misdiagnosed for reasons sometimes outside of the school's control, because the intervention isn't necessarily matching their need. And their behavior is a form of communication. But what Adam said to me was, you helped me out so I can play lacrosse at AI High School when he was a senior at the John Dickinson School. And the point I just make up, now he's in someone else's home in Red Clay. Better for having a quality experience that we want for every child, regardless of what zip code they come from, regardless of what community they come from. And too often we label behavior based on our perception of people's lived experiences. The families at Hocassin have just as many behaviors, sometimes as the children in Wilmington, but they're resourced. And so collectively, how can we partner and get the resources to where the children are and where the needs are? And that's why I do the job that I do. So I'm happy to partner with anyone so that we can address the quote unquote behavior, school culture, school climate, because not everyone has the ability to go to an aftercare program. And to Representative Smith's point, they're likely going home to grandparents who are just struggling to provide a nurturing, loving, caring environment for them to do it. But happy to win your trust back so that your children do come back to a regular school.
All right, we're gonna go 1, 2, 3, and then we're almost at 8. So if you have questions afterwards, I know someone will try to stick around, but I also want to thank them for their time and let them go. And Justin and I will take notes. But Donna, there was, oh yeah, Evelyn, sorry.
That's okay. I just want to hear a little bit about what the Department of Education and what the legislature is doing in early childhood education. Years ago, our state led the nation in a lot of areas of early childhood education, and I don't see that now compared to other states. We have a problem with recruitment, we have a problem with retention, we have a problem that many of the programs are in schools that are not open before and after school. Hours for working parents are not open, vacation days are not open summers. And so I think we have a critical need in early childhood education, and for the last 8 years, I feel like nothing's been done. So if you could talk a little bit about that, I'd appreciate it.
We couldn't agree more. You don't have to close the achievement gap if it never opens, and it doesn't open if kids get access to high quality early childhood. And so that's a strong effort from this. You heard the governor's budget request around making more investments in early childhood education and expanding that and the quality. The first person I met when I got here was Caitlin Gleason and the work that she's been doing to lead early childhood. I talked to her first. the first person that I met when I came to Delaware, like, what are we doing for early childhood? Because we know what to do in kindergarten, but if they come in the door in kindergarten not ready, we're having to play catch up. So the investments are there again. We're building off of strong investments that have happened before I got here, and there needs to be more. Do you want to answer?
No, we'll wrap. Done.
First off, I want to say thank you. Having everyone here and coming at this from a bipartisan perspective is refreshing. It's something that we need to see more of, not just in our state, but across our country. You brought up an opportunity that our state has with reforming the funding system that I think permeates across a lot of the other issues that we've heard here tonight. Because that creates an opportunity to reset our ecosystem of education, to create an opportunity for greater flexibility so that we have resources that are more flexible to meet the needs that are unique in different situations. As Dr. Green talked about, what is important in North Star and where they need to spend that funding is going to look different than what that's going to look like at Warner. And so we need to think about how we maximize that flexibility. We, and having been directly connected with the district further downstate, we see many of the same issues. We see teachers who are working day and night trying to support and help their students in every way possible, and our students are coming to school with many more challenges than we ever recognized when we first got into the profession than we had when we were growing up, and we have to have more flexible ways to address that. And so it's not just sending people out, fixing them and bringing them back, but it's thinking about how do we support that while making sure that we are addressing and holding people accountable for behavior, but making sure that everyone has an opportunity to learn. Changing our funding system gives us greater flexibility to bring new programs in. Consolidating districts, we have to be very careful in looking at data, because you can talk about the wonderful things happening in Massachusetts, which has a large, several hundred districts. You can also look at Arizona, which has almost 700 school districts, and they rank, I think, 48, maybe 46 in NAEP. So when you look at the correlation of that, there is actually no correlation between NAEP scores and number of school districts. You can run the analysis, but there isn't one. So it really is a matter of what you do with the money and the flexibility that you have. And so as you're looking at this from a legislative and policy perspective, I ask that you approach this from an ecosystem and think about how all of these things fit together. These bills come together and come to you one at a time. But think about what they look like, almost like we're building a strategic plan to reset education in Delaware and align all of those pieces together. Many states do an omnibus education bill, where they put the pieces together, they put them in a big giant bill, one big education bill. And they put them all together so that they fit, and that we're not putting pieces together haphazardly and trying to connect them after the fact, but we're actually building it the same way we ask schools to reform and build their strategic plan. We're doing it all in one time. And maybe that's an approach we can take to get all of these things right so that they connect and they're coherent. We have a balanced assessment system so that we've got diagnostic assessments, interim assessments, and our summative assessment that leads to programmatic change. All of those things have to fit together, and they fit together when they start with two people like you sitting down across the aisle and seeing how do we work together, and then having the school district, having the department there. It starts with communication, hearing from the community. I would encourage you to continue to do more of this, get more voices into this conversation, more teachers, more students. We haven't heard from a lot of students today, and I think that is a critical voice we have to hear from. But make sure that we have people at the table to create the solution, not just sitting in a room when the solution has been figured out or set up and then proposed to them. And so I thank you for this. I hope that you'll encourage your colleagues to do more of this in their communities and keep doing this and bringing us back together, because I think this is how change happens, and Delaware needs change in education.
Thank you, Donna. We agree, and thank you for your comments. YF, did you have a, go ahead.
Nothing exciting. I usually like to listen to myself talk, but I don't know
conversations. I have three things. If we can figure out how to address the compassion fatigue of our frontline educators, compassion fatigue, like a burnout, a lot of stress. Secondly, are we having any plans on providing health services in the form of school-based health centers? And then lastly, can we make background checks affordable and accessible for our parents and volunteers? Because it's consistently been a barrier and actually an obstacle to people trying to volunteer. In fact, I have to do background checks every year, and I'm actually a board member. Just kind of like provide you some reference. And then I work in a hospital, I gotta do a background check. I'm a firefighter, I also do a background check. I think at this point, NSA has like this giant stack with my information. But with that said, I think one of the biggest things to improve engagement in the community is to improve access to background checks. We're willing to help. I mean, Christine, we're willing to work with the state or whomever that wants to kind of help solve that.
I'm gonna just put, I do my background check annually too.
Yeah. So you know that challenge. So.
He's a board member, so he knows the ins and outs of it.
Well, I was also a board member. It's done.
And just around the wellness center, we are one of a few districts and fortunate enough to actually, every high school in the state of Delaware has a school-based health center. But we're one of the few districts that actually has them, and they're codified that each high school would have them, but we actually have 4 of them within our elementary schools. And what we've noticed is it's not so much clinical support, so it goes to a lot of the conversation around school culture and climate. What we're seeing and trending down is a lot of those referrals are behavioral health needs, but that also requires parent and family consent a lot of times. So if the families aren't consenting to receiving those supports and services, then that puts the teacher, the school counselor, the school psychologist in a tough position, that support falls back on them. So I think, again, collectively, when we look at it, we have one at Baltz Elementary, we have one at Richardson Park Elementary, and we have 2 within the city. And so we're looking at our hard needs areas, and we partner with Christiana Care to be able to provide those services. If you look at places like Montgomery County, Maryland, a program called Linkages of Learning, they ensure that they have school-based health centers and services in all their elementary schools. But again, that's through public and private partnership. And I think if you're a business owner, you want a viable workforce. But if a parent is struggling with a child at home, most often you're probably seeing that impact within your particular, employment area. And again, there are states between Michigan, Florida, South Carolina, Deep South, where we don't think collaborations are happening. Like, let's take the politics out of it, if we can, and really do the difficult work that's necessary in order to support our community as a whole. Because when Adam comes back to my house to do work, I want to be able to trust Adam, just as you do. When our parents, now that I'm getting to the age where we're starting to parent our parents, and having watched my in-laws, and particularly my mother-in-law, who passed away last May, struggle with quality of care. And a lot of times that quality of care wasn't necessarily based on the facility, it was based on the training and the preparation of the staff who was doing it. So we can look at this from a holistic standpoint, and I think we gotta look at the economics of what does it mean for our state and collectively come together. So as a superintendent of the Red Clay Consolidated School District, I appreciate the feedback that we heard this evening. This isn't in vain, and however we continue to engage our community, to engage the county, to engage the state, and not just from a legislative means, but for public and private partnerships to really address the issues that we all know are prevalent within our communities, we're willing to roll up our sleeves and get it done. So again, thank you to everyone. Your feedback this evening is greatly appreciated from where I sit.
I was just going to echo that. I love an engaged community. I love to see a full room talking about education. Rather have people here than not here. And thank you for bringing people together so we can have a conversation.
So, thank you. I mean, I'm so thrilled about how many people came out tonight on a cold night. And I want to thank, I want to thank the secretary and Matt Den and our superintendent and Vic, our school board member, and my colleague Mike Smith for being here tonight. This was really, I really enjoyed the conversation. I like the free-flowing conversations instead of having presentations and everyone's bored out of their mind. I think we learn more by hearing and engaging and having this dialogue, and I appreciate that everyone is so respectful. I know we're all passionate, but thank you for coming out tonight. It really means a lot to Mike and I. Thank you.
And I'd just like to thank legislators, especially Kim and Senator Buxton for the cell phone bill. I think they listened to the teachers and the SATs, which is not a fair assessment for our kids, and soon that will be going too. So thank you for that, for listening to our educators. Appreciate it.
Guys, thanks for coming out tonight. Remember, this room is available, so if you are interested, feel free to email me and I'll connect you with the captain. We want to try to have more meetings. When I was thinking about this, Kim was the first person I thought of, and so we want to try to do more of these things to get your feedback. Thanks for coming. Drive home safe.
Yeah, we're gonna please read that. There's